Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the RutgersKev Show. It's that time of the year again, Daytona 24 hours. We're almost coming up on the 1-year anniversary of this podcast. This podcast almost started with the cluster F that was last year's Daytona 500, which you can see on your screen. And now it's not a cluster F compared to some other special events in the past, but it had some issues, mostly involving driving standards. We're here this week joined by Patreon supporter Billy Smith. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/RutgersKev. And also the new, what I would say, voice of sim racing now that Will Vincent thinks he's too good to call races, right? No, I'm just kidding. Connery Maddock is here on the show. Say hi.
Hello, and I guess welcome to the RutgersKev Show.
Right. Now, do you have a, it's like, do you have a catchphrase? Do you have like a "Do you mind Jake Sperry" kind of catchphrase?
No, I don't. I mean, I've said many ridiculous things in races before, like just randomly shouting the line as the checkered flag comes out. But I like to put this behind me and not have a, sort of catchphrase that gets somewhat overused sometimes.
Okay, so he's the observer of sim racing, and I would say you're the voice of sim racing now that Will's taking a back seat. That's what I say, at least. And my voice means a lot.
I mean, Will still gets himself involved in like the big World Championship races and any potential LAN sort of offline events that we run. So he's not completely out of the game, but
of course.
It's I don't know if you say that I'm a voice of sim racing, who am I to doubt that? You know.
Well, we're all getting older. I mean, I've been at this 10 years. Will's been at it for how long? We got life. Life is starting to catch up to us old guys. Speaking of old guys, it's Billy Smith.
Hey, Kev. How's it going?
That's a shot. So Billy Smith is, as I said, Patreon supported, also the savior of Autobahn. I wouldn't be going anywhere in that series without for Billy. So thank you very much, Billy.
No problem. Happy to help.
Okay, so we're here to talk about Daytona 24, and but mostly around the incident limits, which is about what happened. Was about what last week's show was about. I gave you all the town hall. I gave you just the raw, audio, because I just wanted to give you guys the full picture, and then I waited to record this till we knew what the incident limit's going to be. So they decided in the end the incident limit's going to be 250. That's 250 for 24 hours. It's about 10 per hour. If I'm somewhat good at my Rutgers math. And somebody was saying that's about one incident per 3.6 laps if you're in a GT3. Obviously, that margin is a lot larger. It's probably like 1.1 for every 6 laps, 1 for every 5 laps or something if you're in a DP, because they just run more laps. So anyway, that's what they decided on. And this is pretty much the third part of this series on the RutgersKev Show. We had me and Matt Malone just go off on special events and everything they were doing wrong after Sebring. And then when they announced they were finally going to do incident limits, I had a episode with Dean Mall talking about incident limits. And then I wanted to do an episode that was basically entitled Much to Do About Nothing, because the incident limits didn't come up during the 24 hours of Le Mans. But now we're into what I would say is the first, well, it's true. It's the first 24-hour race with incident limits since Le Mans. And I believe they did 100 for the 12 hours of Road Atlanta, right? Am I right about that?
It was something like that, yeah.
Right. So now they're doing 250. So it just kind of like I'll just throw it out there. So Billy, just tell the folks at home what your iRating is.
I believe it's 3,200. I don't know. I'd have to look. It's fluctuated a little bit.
Yeah, and you've been a member for iRacing for how many years?
Since the beginning.
Yeah,
pretty much since it went first.
Yeah, you're like an old timer like me. My 10-year anniversary is going to be on the day the 24 hours is run. The 19th.
Oh, wow, nice.
Yeah, so happy anniversary to me. But so how many Daytona 24s have you run?
I think I've run. I mean, how many years have they been doing it? I've only missed maybe one.
Yeah. The only year I missed per se was because our car crashed in the opening stint, and no resets or anything, so I never got in the car. But other than that, I've been involved in all of them. So, how do you feel about the incident limits coming from somebody around your level?
Well, I mean, I think you kind of alluded to it earlier. I don't really know what they're trying to accomplish with that limit. I mean, are you trying to make sure people don't drop tires off? Are you trying to make sure people don't run into other people? Because, I think a conversation that you'd had with Matt Malone, I mean, you can do a lot of damage with that many incident points. So I don't really know what it's doing.
Hey, Kevin, this is Ryan Bueller calling. I'm a longtime iRacing member. Thought I'd just give you a little bit of sense on the 240 incident limit as you're requesting a little bit of feedback. My team runs Day 24 every year, our main road race. We practice. We got probably a little over 1,000 laps already between the team on this, and we're still actively practicing. We're probably about 2-3 splits from the bottom running the DP and stuff like that. And if you really look at the data, at least for our cars, it seems that there's only like 3-4 guys in my split that would have been taken out. And to be honest, those were the hazards. Every time we get near them, our spotters just telling us, watch out for this car, take it extra easy, get around them, continue a race. Our team just wants to finish good, see what we can do, but it's tough. If you look at the top split, you can tell those are the ones that are abusing the bus stop and just trying to gain an advantage. I feel 240 incidents is actually a fair number. It makes it so you want to drive clean and should allow more people to finish the race and take the round end point of the race. Hopefully there's less people that can manage the track, won't be racing. So just wanted to give a little bit of feedback and have a great day.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, again, I just have to keep referring to the raw audio. So if you haven't heard that, I know it's long and I know it's a little tedious sometimes, but I would recommend you go back and listen to it. But if you go back and listen to the raw audio of the town hall, people were bringing up the point like, well, and it really did not get addressed. It was like, well, what's the theory behind the incident limit, and how does setting the incident limit at 250 strengthen that theory? And they really got no answer. What's the theory of the incident limit? Well, to promote clean driving and to get hazards off the track. Well, 250 incidents doesn't do that, right?
Yeah.
So, Connery, how many endurance races have you run?
I've only run a handful during my time as a driver because I've mainly been full-time commentator for the last 2.5 years at this point. So
right, and that's why I asked.
That many.
Right, and so as a broadcaster, it's a little, it's even tricky for you because you don't get a running incident count, as far as I know.
Yeah, we don't. I think it was only administrators in leagues and hosted races and things like that can actually see the amount of incident points that each driver and team gets. And, well, we do have software like Joel Real Timing that can give us a vague estimate of how many incidents that a team or driver has, but that isn't always accurate. So it's kind of very hard to keep track of things during a race. But in terms of my own experience, though, going back to that, I've done a couple of Spa 24 hours. I've attempted a Daytona 24 hour a good while ago, but nothing in recent times, though.
Well, it's just kind of like the response on the from everybody I talk to is just so like it's so polarizing, which means so people are either completely against it or they're like, "What's the big deal?" because it's so high, and then it's like, okay, well, I understand you being against it. Like, I don't want to get DQ'd on hour 23. All right, we don't need to spend 5 minutes on that. That's pretty clear. Okay, the other argument is, I've been practicing every day for a month, and I'm getting one incident per stint. I don't know what the problem is. 250 is no big deal. Okay, well, so my follow-up question, and nobody's given me a good answer, is if 250 is no big deal, then why do we have an incident limit? Right, because it's kind of like it's no big deal, and it's not going to be a big deal. It's going to be much ado about nothing. Now, just to give the listeners a little background, last year the winning DP had 333 incidents. The winning GTE had 386 incidents. And that's because at Daytona, you can gain a little bit of speed if you get a 1X out of the bus stop, and you can gain, I guess, maybe a little bit of speed in the horseshoe if you get a 1X. So without really anything to lose, without a incident limit, everybody would just take that every lap if they could, because why not, right? So we use those to say, oh boy, 250 is low, but it's really not. I mean, if you know that you're going to get disqualified for 250 incidents, you're just not going to cut the bus stop every single lap. I mean, you can see on the screen right there how they're cutting the bus stop on entry and exit. So I mean, they just won't do that this year. So even though they got over 250 last year, it's not going to be a big deal this year. Yeah. And if it's not going to be a big deal, then why do we have it? And it's just, if you get a 1X in a bus stop every single lap, that's 250 laps. GT3 runs like what, 1 minute 40, 145. So just do the math there. You're talking hours and hours and hours and hours before somebody gets DQ'd for 1Xs. And if what we're trying to do is to stop the hazards out there, they're getting 4Xs. It's going to be an awful lot of 4Xs before anybody gets DQ'd.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing the current system is, an endurance race is preventing is those 1X cuts, and it's just reducing it a bit. I don't think, with that high of a limit, you're going to do anything to prevent that car-to-car contact. I mean, because that's, in my opinion, that's kind of what the incident limit is more for. Like, yeah, you don't want people to be dropping tires all the time. That's kind of indicative of, how well you can control the car, or in certain situations on certain tracks where you can make up a little bit of time. But I think everyone would probably agree that the incident system is there to make people race more safely around each other, and it can't do that in its current form.
Which is, and I don't really know what they could do about that, but so I think the incident limit should be a lot lower, but just for these big endurance races, because the key word there is endurance. One of the big things about endurance racing is protecting your car, and that includes in real life even the transmission. You don't want to be really aggressive on the downshifts, et cetera, to keep everything clean and tidy. And these real life cars, if they go off the track into the grass, sometimes the grass gets in the radiator and stuff like that, and then 3 hours later they'll have overheating. Those kind of things.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I've actually raced at Daytona in WRL's Amateur Endurance Series, and on the bus stop, I mean, it's just like, on the sim, but in real life, it's a little bit, it'll rut them out, the edges of the curbs there, and if you do that in real life, you'll actually rip your suspension off eventually.
Right. So, I think that it should be a challenge to go 24 hours. Shouldn't be 24 hours of hot lapping. As a broadcaster and somebody that knows the guys in the top split, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that's been said. As I said, it's a 24-hour endurance race. This is where driver talent and those fast lap times don't really matter in the grand scheme of things if you can't keep that consistent over the full 24 hours. And you brought up the correct point where you can get some cuts coming through the bus stop, but as well as having the issue with the instant point limit coming through there, you also on the edge of getting a slowdown penalty, which is kind of a self-punishing thing anyway. So if you push it too far, you get a slowdown penalty. If you're just cutting it slightly every lap, then that's a 1X. But we're in a situation, though, with the instant limit where it's whether we have one or not, with its current amount of instants, it literally changes nothing in how this race is going to be run, apart from maybe being a little bit more cautious towards the end.
Yeah, and that's a shame, too, because even I went and looked at, like, the bottom splits of last year's race, and, like, remember I said the winning DP car, 333? Well, the winning DP car in, like, split 12 had like, 130. Like, it's not like part of the reason why those top drivers had 333 incidents, because they had the skill to take that one little bit of margin at the bus stop to get a 1X and not a slowdown, right? But also, like, we need to, like, kind of back out of our gamer mentality here. I mean, part of the skill of being a driver is keeping it on the black stuff, right? I mean, it's not just about what time you can set on the board. It's how well you can control your car. I mean, and that's kind of what we've lost in these big endurance races.
Well, I mean, I agree to that to a certain point, but in real life, you're going to use every inch of real estate you can get away with. I mean, you see some tracks where the runoff, instead of having pure asphalt, they'll put that AstroTurf, to where if you hit the AstroTurf, then it's way more slick, so you don't have the it's not advantageous to really run out real wide. And at Daytona, I mean, the thing that keeps you off is once it ruts out, you can damage the car. You can't really do that on iRacing because the track isn't quite that dynamic yet, I'll say. So I mean, if there's no penalty for either wearing the car or the instant, risk of hitting something, then that's just kind of the way it is.
And I agree. That's why I'm not jumping up and down yelling after what happened at Spa with the crazy amount of incident limits and what happened at Daytona last year, because they were within the rules. When there are no rules, then you're within the rules. So at least that's my opinion. Yeah,
and I think this kind of happens, in my opinion. I don't know if we really want to go there, but it's on the older tracks is kind of where you see this, where the fastest line you are going to get a 1X. You look at places like Le Mans, and there's I think there's markers now on it, and there's certain areas where if you go really, really wide, you'll get a slowdown penalty, but you won't get a 1X. And I think that, I don't know, maybe some of these tracks need to be looked at and adjusted.
Well, they talked about that during the town hall, and it's one of those easier said than done kind of things. Okay, so I think we've said our piece on the incident limit. I mean, there really is just no right answer. I mean, if you set it at 150, that's too low. If you set it at 250, that's too high. It's kind of like, and then 200, it makes sense because the 6-hour endurance races that they always run every 2 weeks have incident limits of 50. So you just time that by 4, that's 24 hours, should be 200, right? But then it's 200. So what separates this from the 6-hour race? It's just longer. And it's like, what's special about it? So like, there really is no right answer, and there really is an argument for all sides.
Now that we know that the Daytona 24 hours will have 240 incidents, it actually gives a great insight on what iRacing actually tries to achieve. I know they always say, yeah, they're there to stop the intent wreckers from doing their stuff, but I actually think it is a stepping stone into something bigger and probably, or most definitely, better. I know we have right now these slowdowns with the incident system, but obviously pretty much everyone knows and says that it is not sufficient for what we actually need. As in having time penalties or stop and go penalties for people that go over a certain incident limit. And then obviously the more they go over an incident limit, like 2 times, 3 times, the harsher these penalties get until they get instant DQ'd. And I think that setting that incident limit to 240, being obviously 10 per hour, it actually is quite good. Now, on a track like Daytona, where you don't normally get a lot of off tracks, or where off tracks are not helping you to increase your pace artificially, it doesn't matter that much. But going to Spa 24 hours, where I'm probably expecting the same incident limit with 10 per hour, it actually makes a great difference. Because if you look through the lists of Spa 24 hours, you can see people getting 400, 500, 600 incidents alone. Just one guy. Last year, Spa 24 hours, I got 390 incidents because I didn't care. Now, why did I not care? Because you can gain half a second by using those off tracks. Yeah, you're gonna lose your B license, your C license. You're probably even gonna go down to D license from A class with that many incidents. But it's worth it because you're gaining so much. Now that iRacing is really trying to enforce that, it gives a great benefit to the racing quality. and to the safetiness, because you don't have to expect someone now to go off track onto that artificial grass and spinning out and maybe killing you. So what iRacing is trying to do with the incident limit, I really like it, but we have to go further. Limit and more by event and event. So everyone who is complaining starts to really go for that incident limit, to stay under it, to drive to the off-track limit. Stay on the track, because on the track is safe as long as you don't kill anyone.
So let's talk about the race itself. This is the first 24-hour race that's official that's going to have the day-night transition. So on the screen, you're watching last year's race, which is run at night, and the whole race was run at night. Now, this isn't the first 24-hour race in general. There was a hosted 24-hour race, so that was cool to tune into the streamers and stuff, because you'd like check in on them, and the sun is rising, and you check in on them, and it's midday. You check in on them again, the sun's setting. Now, I thought that was pretty neat. How much are you looking forward to it over there at Race Spot?
Oh, it's going to be absolutely brilliant, because we've had our regular endurance series, use day-night transitions as soon as they come out, and we haven't had any 24-hour races in those series yet. They've mostly been 6 hours, 12 hours, etc. But from what I have seen, the visuals themselves look absolutely stunning. iRacing have done a really, really good job with the skyboxes and the whole atmosphere, of a endurance racing weekend. And there's more to come on that front, because we heard all the things about the high dynamic range lighting. So, that'll just add to things, and it changes the car's handling as well, as the track temperature does drop off like a stone straight after sundown. Even to a point where in the Nicky team 12 hours of Spa he did for the Danish Childhood Cancer Foundation, we saw a lot of the GTE machines especially, and the Porsches especially, really, really struggle. They were starting to get a huge amount of entry oversteer as the track temperature was dropping off. So that it's just a whole new other factor and a whole new element that teams and drivers really have to think about. You don't set your car up for one specific weather, one specific track temperature, like has been happening for endurance races, all the way back since they started here on iRacing. Now you have to think, okay, how is my car going to handle when it's pitch black out there, or not in the case of Daytona because it's fully lighted, but if the track temperature is so low, how's the car going to change? And do I have to make compromises in my daytime sort of style of driving to help the nighttime?
Yeah, it's interesting. Have you had any conversations with any top teams about what they're thinking, like, and how they're going about approaching this?
I haven't got the chance to discuss this with many of them. It's something I'll definitely be doing before the race starts, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the teams set up more towards the night side of things, because we know Daytona 24 hours, it's the 24-hour race which has the most, nighttime racing in it, because it's in the middle of winter in the Northern Hemisphere. So I think that's kind of the strategy that they would go for. But at Daytona, though, it's interesting, because it's not really that tricky of a track, and you're mainly relying on your straight line speed coming down through the NASCAR turns and down the back straight, down the front straight. So the car handling is already sacrificed in terms of getting the straight line speed anyway. So I don't know. It's something I'll have to follow up with them, definitely.
Do we know what, if anything, could be done inside the car to help the drivers?
A very limited amount. This isn't like, in your NASCAR oval cars where you can raise, lower the track bar, change the suspension geometry, things like that. Of course, in things like the GT3 machines, you've got all of your traction control settings or ABS settings that you can tweak with. You can have a little bit of a play around with the tire pressures, but that is pretty much it as far as adjustments go for your three classes. So it's going to be a huge challenge. If the setup that you start the race on is pretty much what you'll have to deal with throughout the 24 hours, shared amongst all of your drivers that are running as well. So it's a real team effort.
Yeah, and I was going to add on to that. I don't think you'll see much changes with the tire pressure just because of the nature of iRacing at the moment, but you'll definitely be able to adjust the brake bias, and that's something that will probably come into play. I think Connor kind of alluded to, if you're going into turn one and there's a lot more grip. It's going to be, have more of a tendency to want to loop around. So it's going to, probably be something that drivers will have to adjust.
What car are you running, Billy? Because I'm in the Corvette.
The team I'm on, we're going to be running the Ferrari.
See, you're one of the masses. See, boo. You see when they zig, you have to zag. That's how I feel. I'm just okay. So that's actually a good way to move on to our next topic, which is the splitting system. So we're not to the point of it now in the broadcast, which we're watching on stream, because they're just starting to lap the cars, and the first time through, everybody's careful. But in the first 4 hours, I believe they lost 4 liters in this race last year, and mostly because of subpar driving, mostly by the DPs. Mostly, not all, and some of it had to do with problems we've addressed in the past, where the high iRating guy signs up but then doesn't race. But I think also a thing that, again, there's no right answer, but just something to consider if we're previewing the race. This has to be discussed. Is that there's going to be a lot of splits with only GTE cars in them, and it's going to be the 24 hours of GTE. And I don't really know if they're getting the full experience, but it is something to, when you're previewing the race, it is something to at least, to think about, that you're going to have, like the guys like me, 2500 iRating guys that are in the Corvette. We are going to be guys around splits with high 4000s. Just a difference in skill level between the classes, and how there's going to be a lot more GTEs in the other classes. Did you call that race last year?
I called the start of the race last year, I believe.
Oh,
and
so you were there for the mess, right?
Yeah, it was really interesting indeed, and it's something that shouldn't really be happening in a top split, but you can see why it does happen, because not a lot of people like to drive the Daytona Prototype. And the people that do get themselves in the car, obviously, as you've already explained, have really got the R rating to be able to compete at such a high level, and keep themselves safe on the racetrack. And this is an issue that's been happening throughout the past couple of seasons of IMSA on iRacing anyway, because the DP participation drops off a cliff, and you see streamers like Matt Malone, Rebecca Pauline, etc. So many clips on Twitch of just really, really stupid DP drivers just, making dumb moves amongst GT drivers that are, so far above their skill level. There's so many occasions where the back of the Daytona Prototype field is actually slower than the front of the GTE field, and that's, you just can't be having it. You simply can't be having it. But iRacing have gone onto the forums recently and said, "Oh, what can we do to change the DP? Does it need more grip? Does do the other cars need to be slowed down?" And it's just like, to me, sort of quote unquote, to use in gaming term, buffing the DP is, I don't really like that, because it's iRacing potentially trying to band-aid an issue with just band-aid an issue and not solve the root of the problem, which may be that those GTE cars are actually too quick, as some people have already described, and compared lap times in iRacing to lap times on the real-life side of things.
Well, that's going to be a whole nother show per se. Hey, there's a wreck on screen. That's really our first multi-class wreck. Yeah, that's going to be a whole nother show. And Drew actually did do a town hall discussing the DP, and nothing came out of it. So it's not. So if something comes out of it, we'll have a show about it. But in my opinion, if you're coming in Daytona, you don't know what's going on, that's definitely something that we talk about. If we're previewing the race, that's part of it. Okay, so I guess we could, on Billy, unless you have something to say about that.
No, I mean, I have a few kind of my opinions, but I don't have anything really to back up on that. I don't really know what a good solution is right now for iRacing. I can agree with everything that both of you have said.
I do want to kind of interject, though, because even if they do speed up the DP or slow down the GTEs, I don't think that'll entirely solve the issue, because the issue is participation based, then you've still, even with a buff DP or a slightly slower GTE car, you're still going to have situations where the low iRating DP drivers are going to come into contact with GT leaders, and that's just the exact same situation when they're trying to get themselves dealt with in terms of the lap traffic. So it's I don't think it's going to solve anything, and the problem is with the participation. Maybe iRacing, to try to solve this, introduce a new Daytona prototype or some other LMP2 car that can, fill in the slot until that happens.
And I think that's honestly the solution. I mean, I haven't driven the DP much. When I did, I didn't really care for it that much, and I think a lot of people look at it as it's old and it's not relevant, and I think that really deters a lot of people from wanting to.
And it's tricky to drive. I mean, you throw in, you put a driver who can't handle it, and then you throw him in a GTE car, and he's like, oh, I'm going to drive the GTE car. So it just leads to more participation in a GTE car.
Yeah. Like I said, I've driven the DP before, very little, and I just never really enjoyed it. And I would think that there's a lot of the people in that same boat as well. I just didn't think it was very enjoyable to drive. If there was a call it the equivalent to the HPD, or I guess a DPI or LMP2 that was new and relevant, that's probably what I would end up driving.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, another topic for another day. Problems with IMSA. I mean, you could pretty much do a whole show like that. But honestly, to my little summary on that, I don't really think iRacing cares. It affects one split, maybe how many times per week, and how many drivers are really affected. 12, 15 each week, right? And then there's only one major event that runs in IMSA cars. So I don't really think on the list of things that iRacing should be working on, I don't really know if IMSA is at the top of their list, and rightfully so. Okay, so there's only just one more thing to talk about. The BOP changes to the GTE were announced, and they apply effective immediately, but they're not applying to Daytona. Weird, because they're going to run the series here at Daytona with the changes, but the Daytona 24 won't have the changes. Very, very strange. But I mean, there must be a reason to it, and actually, I'm in favor for it because, like we said earlier, people practice for months for these things. Mm-hmm. I need people to be practicing for a month, and I'm not even saying like the 6,000 iRating guys. I'm talking like the 3,500 guys, the 2,800 guys, the guys that really care, that practice for a month, and then they really, really tweak the setup, and then 12 days before the race, they say, "Oh, by the way, you got 22 pounds added to your car. Go." That sucks. So I'm actually in favor for it not applying for Daytona. It's just kind of weird.
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, I think that you're on the right track, as iRacing probably didn't want to apply it for this race for that reason that you mentioned. But I wouldn't think it would be that big of a deal. I mean, you're not going to be able to, with the way the day to night is now, which has been a topic on the forums, you can't dial the setup in completely, dialed in like you would before in previous years when things were more static. So, 10 pounds, I think, is what the Ford GT had, or one of them did. And I think maybe the Ferrari had 20 pounds. I mean, if it's all done at the center of the car, I mean, it's not really going to make that much of a difference, I think.
But let's say these guys really put the work in, and then they tested all three cars, and they said, okay, the Ford is the fastest. I actually don't know what the fastest is. I'm just going to say it's the Ford. Okay, the Ford's the fastest. Let's practice the Ford. And then 12 days before the race, there's BOP changes, and now the Porsche's faster. And they're like, oh, fuck, now we got to go do the Porsche. It's kind of, so it just causes more anger than probably is worth it doing the BOP for one race. So I'm probably better off just keeping it out. Instead, I've been trying to stress to them during these town halls that when they make these decisions, they got to be a little business savvy. Again, another topic for another show. They're talking about doing maybe dynamic weather for Indy qual. That's just, from a business perspective, that's stupid. Mm-hmm. You're going to piss off more people than you're going to like doing something like that. So why would you do that? I mean, So again, another topic for another day. So I just think that it's just when you're previewing the race, which is the point of this show, it's just something to talk about. It's going to be interesting though, seeing like the if there's any other broadcasts of the 6-hour races or any other like hosted like races at Daytona, and like you're like a casual viewer and you tune into one race and one makes better, and you turn into the other race and the other make is better. Yeah, I could definitely see some head scratching there.
Yeah. But the thing is, I think overall that I agree that doing this for the actual 24-hour, just keeping it as it was is the correct decision, instead of having these changes come in 2 weeks before the race and just telling everyone to deal with it. So yeah, I think that's the right way of going about things. But it will also be interesting to see, just having a look at some of the IMSA races from this point forward, as to how much that actually affects things. Because the biggest problem with the Porsche was its straight line speed. It was great in the corners, and it just gained a whole bunch of time over the other two GTE machines. But in a straight line, it was just completely left for dust in terms of the other two cars. And that's a big problem, because a big overtaking opportunity for GT cars especially is on the brakes into heavy braking zones. And to be able to even get yourself into position to do that, you need the straight line speed. So it was a tough life for the Porsche drivers, but I don't know how much plus 10 kilograms for the Ford and plus 5 kilograms for the Ferrari is really going to affect things. So I don't know. The jury's still out. We'll have to see how it works out. But, and we'll have to see if this then gets applied to the GTEs and any other special events that they run in as well.
Now, part of the reason why Connery is on the show this week is because I'm without Randy around anymore. I'm really out of the loop on the World Championship hot takes, as I called them. World Championship hasn't started yet, but, Connor would be more in the loop here on what's happening. But again, this is just a fact of the world that we live in. It's really hard to do a preview of a race where you don't even know who's going to race in it. A World Championship race, then we know who quals. We know who the contenders are. We know who top teams are, but there's pro qualifying race on the same day. Am I right on that?
I believe you might be right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm right. So it's gonna screw up. Well, I mean, from a preview perspective, you don't know if this team is gonna run in it. Some team got third last year. Oh man, I can't think of their names, but they're Finnish. They got
Glacier Racing.
Glacier Racing is Finnish, but that wasn't who I was thinking about.
Inertia. That's the only two.
Inertia. That's them.
There
Yeah, I think that is them. In fact, they're on the screen right now. Inertia. Right. Okay. Yeah, that's them. I don't think that they made a GT endurance championship last year, so they're probably racing pro. So even though they got third last year, they may not even be in this race.
And you've got obviously the GT Endurance Pro Series to worry about, but also during the start of that race of the 24-hour, you also have the Porsche Pro Series as well. So a lot of the top drivers from some of your teams won't be able to get themselves in potentially and do qualifying or do the fist into the race, which is an extra thing that'll just shuffle things up, at least at the start. But in terms of the teams that you usually start talking about in these longer endurance races, so anything 12 hours and up, Radicals Online, of course, won the race last year.
Controversially.
Controversially is definitely a word. It was a case of them sending it down the inside at turn 1 on the last lap, and the appropriate stamp licking was made.
I'll see if I can fast forward and find it. It's on a different video. I can't, so we'll just take his word for it.
I mean, last lap of an endurance race, you're going to have to go for everything. But they did end up winning that, and you know, previously, before they had the whole roster change situation that they've been having in recent times, losing Carl Janssen to Core Sim Racing and losing Kazuki Mishima as well to Burst Esports, that's going to mean their roster's a little bit lacking in terms of this coming race, because you don't have your star drivers that you can put in the car. Don't get me wrong, they can still be very, very consistent. They can put those laps down lap after lap after lap, and that is actually how they won the Daytona 24-hour last year, because they were the ones that basically avoided most of the incidents and avoided most of the problems, except for turn 1 last lap. But you know, I'm not really expecting much from them in this coming race, but the main battle, I think, at least in prototypes, is going to be Pure Racing Team, VRS Sim Sports. Yeah, you've also got Thrustmaster Movano in there, so that'll be like my top 3 picks, I guess, if we're doing picks for prototypes, because Pure Racing Team especially have a huge depth of roster. You have Matsunin Baneke, top driver in terms of iRacing on the entire service, over 10k, first road driver to do that, and of course you got Ty Majeski on the oval side that has done that, and you know, everyone else in their team, everyone in the roster, you can put in the car and just say, yeah, he can go and win a race. So they're definitely the drivers to beat. So prototypes is going to be interesting, but it's not going to be as close as it was last year, unless we get some outside influences, which we do usually see in 24-hour races.
It'll be an interesting race, to say the least. There's going to be a lot of storylines. Again, another topic for another day. We're already at 38 minutes, and it's 3-something in the morning. Therefore, you know, it's kind of hard to you watch these endurance races on real life, and then every hour they do a recap of the whole race. You know, in case you're just tuning in, here's all the highlights. And Race Spot, because of technical limitations, and no broadcaster really can do that. I mean, they'd have to have somebody like on the ball at all times making Twitch clips, which is just impossible. You know, they're not getting paid enough money to hire somebody to do something like that.
Yeah, the budget isn't the biggest thing in the world for
right,
sport.
right.
Let's just put it that way.
Right.
I mean, if we could hire a replay director, observer person to actually cut and splice together those things, and you know, pay them for their time, which is, you know, the most important thing. We don't want to have anyone doing that for free in their own time, you know, because esports are getting to a stage where it's not just a labor of love anymore.
Well, not only that,
it's an actual professional industry.
Right. They'd have to cut, slice it, and write a script.
Yeah.
Because the guy who's calling the comment doesn't know what's coming up, so he'd have to follow the script. That takes somebody who's trained. That takes somebody that does it for a living.
What I was going to say is we can dream one day. I think the way things are looking, which I think you discussed an episode or so ago, Kev, I think it's heading that direction. So maybe one day we will be able to.
Well, I just think this is going to be a race from the Race Spot point of view, where there's going to be a lot of stories. I think just the story of the race is going to be constantly evolving, just like the sun is rising and setting. And I really wish we had that ability to, you know, if you're just tuning in, here's what you missed, kind of thing. Is Race Spot doing the whole 24 hours, or are they taking breaks?
Last I heard, we were doing the whole 24. I'm just gonna actually double check this one here, because I do have the schedule up right in front of me. So we are doing the entire 24 hours, but we'll have guest broadcasters, commentators from
I would hope so.
Other channels.
I would hope so.
Yeah, I mean, we've done the whole 24-hour race on our own thing before. It was a struggle, but we managed to do it. But for this, we would definitely like to get, commentators from GSRC, from LSR TV, from Apex TV as well. You know, just to get them in on the broadcast, help us out a little bit. That wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, one thing we need to get to endurance races. They fill like almost half the time, really, in the stretches of the race. They just fill it with interviews. So and so just got out of the car. Let's talk to them for 3 minutes. You know, and they just do that for team by team by team, and that's how they fill time. You know, we need the drivers involved.
Never forget the whole breakfast with Will Vincent segment that happens at the start of the races. It's just like, go through everyone. What did everyone have for breakfast on this morning? It's that sort of time filling. I mean, some people complain about that and just go on to the broadcast chat and say, "Oh, why aren't you guys talking about the race?" But we can see on our live timing screens if there's a battle going to be happening that's close, or if people are down on towards the lane. And we can comment on that when it's relevant. But the rest of the time, if there's no battles going on, then endurance racing commentary is basically a podcast for the length of the race.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. If you go and look at the last 6 hours of the Le Mans 24, that race was over. That race was over and done. So you guys had nothing to talk about. Like literally nothing. Like every single leader had like over a minute lead, and it never changed. So it's just that's when you did the cone cam, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah. That kind of went a little viral with the meme with Jimmy B getting involved with that. Yeah, that was basically the point in the race where we were so desperate for things to talk about, where we just spotted a camera shot that Hugo, our director, was putting onto the production feed, and we were like, yeah, let's just make a meme out of this and see where it leads.
Right. Because without like that extra content that these, in real life, not in Europe, but in America, there's ad breaks and they just fill the time with interviews, and a lot of it's sponsored. They talk to the guy that runs Ford just to get his Ford plugs in, those kind of things. We don't really get those luxury. I mean, I totally envy. I mean, I don't envy you guys is what I'm trying to say. You guys have a tough job. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So I got mad respect for all the broadcasters. I would love to be a part of it someday, like as like the fifth guy in the booth, but I couldn't do what you do and just call the race, and I could never do a sprint race.
I just got a question for you real quick, Connor.
Okay.
What do you guys kind of plan out ahead of time what your fillers are going to be, for these endurance?
No, think planning. This is Race Spot.
Whoa, what do you take us for? That comes down onto a commentator by commentator basis. I know a couple that do like to plan out their talking points behind, but there are some others with a more fluid style, able to just go with the flow and wing it. But yeah, I mean that just completely is down to personal preference. Maybe for the World Championship races, we're quite a bit more structured in how we put together those, because obviously those are our biggest series that we broadcast. There are so many eyeballs on there that's maybe watching for the first time, etc., etc. So we really try to put in a lot of effort for those in terms of our commentator selection and our style. But for endurance races, as I said, it's basically a 24-hour podcast. Once the first 3 hours are over and done with, and once you're before you're into the last hour.
Yeah, I was just curious about that because of the the length of time, and part of the endurance racing is kind of letting that story unfold. Kind of what's happening, where you have those from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. or not much happened, but it's kind of playing out where it's going to happen later on in the race, but you just don't really have much to talk about. So that's kind of where I was going.
It's hard to do because, like I said, you're telling the story. At this pace, in 90 minutes, there's going to be a battle for third. I mean, honestly, how many people are still watching in that 90-minute period? A lot of people, even me, they click on for 20 minutes and they click off, click on for 20 minutes, click off. So it's really hard. It's really hard for the broadcasters to tell that story.
I guess it's a topic that I've wanted to talk about for a while, and maybe it can be a different episode for your podcast, but it's just the disparity between how many viewers famous Twitch streamers get, and the disparity between that number and how many are watching like the broadcasts. I always find that really, really intriguing. And I did mention on my Twitter before, it's just like what are the reasons why people would prefer watch a point of view stream rather than a pro sort of broadcasted stream, and a lot of that comes down to personality, I found out. But still, it's a topic I do want to delve into at some point.
Okay, well, we'll do a whole nother episode on that, and including in that, we will get a whole nother episode on why so many people watch Matt Mullen and Jimmy Broadbent, why so few people watch RutgersKev. So that'll be another episode that comes up. No, just kidding. So, Billy, do you got anything to plug or anything? Or you got something to talk about?
Not specifically, unless you wanted to get more into that. The only thing I have to.
Well, I'd love to have you back on the show, Billy, like a full time when we got nothing to talk about.
Awesome, I'll be there.
Okay, good. But I know if you had a team or anything, I'm not sure what your situation is, other than you're my big help for Autobahn.
No, the only thing I have is personal. Forgot the word. Personal Instagram accounts and stuff like that people could follow me on if they care to.
Okay, well, with a specific name like Billy Smith, I'm sure it'd be easy to find you.
Well, it's Billy Jack too. It's not. Well, you go to type in my name. Good luck. But
all right, Connery Race Spot is on YouTube, but the race is going to be on the Esport Network, I would assume.
Yes, you're exactly right. We've got a couple of races coming up over the weekend. We've got the Raw before the 24, which is always an
I still have to practice for that
event. Yeah, it can be bonkers on occasion, but it's an enjoyable event. We have the Porsche Pro Qualifying Series as well on the same day. Both of those around about 1:30 GMT, and then New Endurance Series on the Sunday at 2. But if you're wanting to have social media as well, I guess I can give that. I'm on Twitter at RaptrosCast. That's RAPTROS casts, all one words. Follow me there if you somehow find me interesting. I somehow doubt it, but oh well.
Okay, and of course, all the World Championships are going to be on Race Spot. So I'm sure anybody who listens to this knows Race Spot, I would hope. If you don't, they definitely got the what's going on sim racing happening on their channel and the Esports Network. All right, well, thanks guys for being on the show. Best of luck to Billy in year 24. We might be in the same split. I mean, I doubt it, but me and my teammate have 2700s, and we'll be in the Corvette. So
we might be.
Yeah. All right. Well,
but I just got to say that for the Roar, you better get to practicing, and I'm not going to have a setup for you.
No, I'm in the MX-5. It'll be fine. And then that's what I'm doing right now. So as soon as this is over, we're not going to edit or anything. We're just going to write in the MX-5 practice. MX-5 is just a draft fest. Just get through the bus stop and keep the draft and hope a Kia doesn't break up your battle.
Can I just say, even if it doesn't matter if it's top splits or, in whatever split people want to race, but I would be very sad if we don't see an MX-5 5 wide down the back straight at some point or down the front straight. I just want to see it. Bonus points if it's the checkered flag as well.
Oh, I guess we didn't mention which version of the race you're broadcasting. I mean, I know, but when's the race? What's the race? Aren't there 2 races?
Oh yeah, we're broadcasting the 1:30 p.m. GMT split, and that'll be the top split for that as well.
Of the Roar or the 24?
Yeah, of the Roar.
Okay, and what about the 24?
The 24, I believe it would be a very similar time slot if I can just find this on my screen. Yeah, it's 1:30 GMT though.
Okay. Yep. So, I mean, tune in, watch the first 10 minutes, then tune back out, then watch like 45 minutes in. That's when they loop traffic the second time. That's when the accidents happen. That's when the fun stuff occurs. So, and then you can tune out for a little bit. It's fine. It's all good. Maybe tune into the RutgersKev show. Actually, I don't think I'm going to get any viewers because I'm not getting in the car till after 12 hours into the race. I'm on a team with all Europeans. I guess I should give my own team a plug. I'm with either SimSport. I ran with them last year, Daytona 24, and we were in a huge accident. And at that time, there was no iRating in effect, and there's really nothing to gain by keep going. So they're all Europeans. They're in bed. I raced 8 hours in a 10-hour time period by myself. There wasn't anybody in voice chat or anything. Just with JMH car, we were in 18th. The hood was crumpled up, and I was in VR, so you could barely even see over it. We wound up finishing 12th, and at the end of it, I was just like, "What's the point?" It's a little different this year because, we have iRating to gain or lose. But last year, I was kind of sour to the whole thing, as I talked about on that episode with Matt. If you go back to the archives,
I don't recall that podcast, but that's some punishment.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's an endurance race. You should stick in. You should stick through it. I totally understand. I get it. But at the same time, I was after it was done, it was just kind of like, did I have fun? And the answer was no. But with iRating in effect, a gain and loss, you don't want to quit on your teammates. So it would be different this year. I'm pretty sure. So anyway, okay, thanks everybody for being on the show. Boy, we just leave on a positive note. No, I am looking forward to this race. I'm looking forward to the DP. I'm looking forward to get the track time in because I'm running the DP in Majors, which is the following day, which is a whole nother topic. Majors is on the same weekend as all the special events. Even though you just spent up 24 hours doing that, now you got to turn around and race 2.4 hours. But it gets me to track time, so I'm looking forward to it. So all that is going to be on my YouTube. I'm kind of going away from Twitch. I'm going to go over to YouTube. So youtube.com/RutgersKev. But so tune into me, tune into Race Spot, but you don't need to turn into Billy Smith. Are you on this? Are you on Tinsley's team, Billy?
I didn't know that Tinsley's actually running. I'm actually running Autobahn, so it's going to be me, John Ulmer, I think Lee Peterson, and might have another driver or two.
I didn't know if Tinsley was running either, but I know he has a stream. That's why I brought it up. So, okay, well, thanks everybody for watching. We'll tune in to the next episode, probably in 2 weeks, because we definitely want to do it after Daytona 24. And if you're new to the show, welcome. But thanks for listening for an hour. If you're new to the show, it's because of Marcus. This whole RutgersKev thing is not about Marcus Ambrose, but Marcus Ambrose is going to be a part of what I'm doing over here. So Marcus's series is going to be called Sim Race Like a Pro. It's going to be on my YouTube channel. Every episode is going to be called Sim Race Like a Pro. So if you just want that, you can just focus on that. There's also a playlist, Marcus Ambrose iRacing, so you could just follow that, and then if anything happens, you just can watch that. You don't have to watch me race my VRS sprint race if you just care about Marcus Ambrose. Of course, welcome, and we're just here to just talk about iRacing. So if you've liked this podcast, there's plenty more in the archives, and there's plenty more to come. Thanks to my Patreon supporters. So thanks, Billy Smith.
You're welcome, Kevin. I just want to say real quick, congrats on the stuff with Marcos. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I don't want to. I talked about it last week, but yeah, I mean, it's a game changer for me. The idea is to make it a game changer for sim racing, but we're not there yet. By the way, yeah, I guess I am. If you're listening, again, an hour in, I don't know who is. But if you are listening, I am looking for somebody that's good with graphics or video editing, that kind of thing, to just kind of make it more professional looking. Obviously, Marcos is looking for that same person as well. So if you've got that kind of ability and you want to get involved in what we're trying to do, let me know. We would appreciate your help. So thank you to Billy. Thank you to Connery for all the work that you've done. I know, we've had prior episodes with Randy about the commentators. I know what you guys do, and I for one appreciate it. And I know you guys don't really get the amount of respect that you guys really earned by your hard work. But you're always supported over here at RutgersKev.
All right, thank you very much, Kev. That really does mean a lot.
All right, bye everybody. Bye.
That's the end of my show. Donk.